There's an authentic Swedish restaurant in Wisconsin that's known for something other than its amazingly delicious food. At any given time during the year, the roof of Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant is covered in live goats. Yes, you heard me right. I said live goats. Located in Sister Bay, Wisconsin, the Scandinavian restaurant's roof is covered in a thick layer of sod, making it a perfect place for a bunch of hungry goats to hang out on a summer day. The Al Johnson goat tradition is sort of a local legend that came about when a man named Wink Larson began buying his friend a birthday barnyard animal. Kind of a weird gift, but whatever. One year, Wink bought Al a pet goat named Oscar, and the rest was history. It wasn't long before Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant became known as that place with the goats on the roof. If you're traveling through Door County and you're looking for a place to knock back a plate of Swedish meatballs, you're not going to get much better than Al Johnson's Swedish restaurant boutique.
Hi, good morning. Welcome to Al Johnson's.
The start of it was, my dad had a partner in the very beginning. In '49, my dad had gone to Marquette, and he came out of the Army Airborne, and he was in Army Intelligence, and that was going to be his degree. In fact, that was his degree after he went to school as well, but he didn't finish. He had a year to go, and the opportunity came, finish school and/or buy this grocery store and turn it into a restaurant. And it worked out. He decided, I'm going to stick this out for a couple more years, and then a couple more, turned into a couple more, and then you got what you got today. They used to have a cabin out in Appleport. Now even I walk out there to this day, and I still feel like I'm 9 or 10 years old. And we got old photographs of him where he grew up out there. He was a dog person. All the kids here are animal people. So long before the log building was built here, it was the original restaurant. Looked more like an A-frame or your typical city store, really, but in a small town. I remember the plaques being out front of the provinces in Sweden. I remember my grandfather being here, my grandmother being in the kitchen all the time, meatballs being rolled by hand before the machine came along.
We used to have white tabletops. They used to have big metal pedestals under the tables, and as little kids we used to climb around and bang them with forks and knives, or we'd grab straws and we'd shoot. We thought that the restaurant was like a playground for us.
Counter was still as it is. Even the old wood paneling underneath the counter is the same. I think if you look around, these chairs are the original chairs that I remember. Nothing told you it was a Swedish restaurant from the outside at that time.
I mean, there were times where it's so slow that he would just hang a sign on the door that said, "Gone fishing, help yourself." And there was a can, and everybody would just drop money in it. The reason why we have the restaurant today the way it is because of Dean Madden. And Dean would walk by and he'd say, "You ought to build a log restaurant with a sod roof."
They went to Norway, and they were introduced to a fellow by the name of Knut Larsen, and they sat down. And as my dad used to tell it, on a napkin they sketched out some drawings and a handshake, and away they went.
And they built the entire building in Norway first, and everything was delivered here on the date that they needed the logs, and everything was built completely around the old restaurant. We never closed.
No, sir. He's going to build this restaurant around the old restaurant, and we'll disassemble the logs or disassemble the old walls as the new logs went up. We watched the Norwegian carpenters hand carve some of the posts out here with their homemade Norwegian knives that they're very proud of.
I remember the greatest picture ever that I saw was my dad sitting at the very tippy top of the gift shop when the logs were crisscrossed like this, and he's sitting there on top with a little Swedish flag. So it was really neat, and they put it all together, and it worked. He had a really good friend, Harold Larson, who everybody called Wink Larson, Winky Larson. He had the ski hill, North Ski Ridge in Fish Creek. And he and Al were very good friends. And as a joke, every December 9th, he would always get my dad a pet. When Al was redoing the roof, his friend kept saying, "Well, you ought to put a goat up there. You ought to put a goat up there." Every day he'd come and bother Al and tell him, "Well, you ought to put a goat up there." So one day, unbeknownst to Al, Winky went and found a goat, and it was a big billy goat. His name was Oscar.
He actually slung it under his arm, and he carried it up the ladder, and this was no small goat. And when he got to the top, the goat leapt to the first sure footing he saw, and Winky went down backwards, and I think he busted several ribs, and the goat sat there down, looked at Wink Larson, and that's how the whole thing really started.
So it wasn't for his best friend Wink Larson, I don't believe that we would have even thought about putting a goat on the roof.
Every once in a while, Al and my dad would get a letter that say, "Mr. Johnson, I want to bring this to your attention. We had a marvelous meal at your place. We went in there, but I think it's terrible about that elderly busboy that runs around there and shouting at all the girls." And he would chuckle, and he'd write a letter back and say the elderly busboy was me, Al Johnson, and I apologize if you felt like you were rushed, but we have, June, July, August, September for these people to make their money and us to make our money. And we hope you enjoyed your meal, as it sounds like you did. But by no means do we mean to rush you, but that's just the nature of the business here.
He was in here working, we were in here working, and we didn't complain about it. We just would try to keep up with Al and try to keep up with Ingrid. You know, it's like they were working all the time.
He used to always say, I want to put Door County on the map or Sister Bay on the map. I think he did. They might not know the name of the restaurant, they might not know, you know, but they do know the place with the goats on the roof no matter where you go. Part of Door County forever, you know.